Hello again, welcome to episode 26 of our weekly CRICKETher Vodcast. Today we're honoured and delighted to be at the RHF Bowl for the next round of the RHF Trophy, and today we're going to be watching Vipers play the Storm. So that's going to be interesting. By the time you watch this it'll probably be halfway through or there'll be some kind of a result. So we thought that we'd start off today's vodcast by talking about the trophy so far. So at this point in time when we're recording, we're 4 rounds in, with a couple more matches for each team to go, and then the final in a couple of weekends' time. What do you think, Sid? Has it been a success so far?
Yeah, definitely. I think it has been a success. I think that what we've seen is that with the cancellation of the 100, the ECB have given it a degree of priority that, let's be honest, it might not otherwise have had. But you know, it's had lots of positive vibes around it. We've seen some good cricket, and you know, it's had some successes in other areas, like the fact that it's on the front page of CRICKETher, which the Women's County Championship never was. And we've also seen live streams of almost every game, or perhaps every single game. Obviously, we haven't watched all the live streams ourselves because we've been at the games, fortunately. But those live streams have been really great quality too, haven't they, Raf? What do you think has made the difference with those live streams?
I think that's a good question, and I think for me it's having the commentary makes such a huge difference, because obviously even if you've got a fixed camera, as some of them have been, although some of them have been multi-camera, haven't they? But even if you've just got a fixed camera, if you've got a couple of commentators there at the ground, then they can fill in the gaps for you. Whereas obviously if you're just watching the fixed camera yourself, then you're very reliant on the reactions of the players, and you can't necessarily work out what's happened. So yeah, while having the multi-camera is ideal, and you then might, if you only have the fixed camera, then you miss out on some of those amazing catches that Maya Boucher took here on Friday, for example, for the Vipers. I think that the commentary is really great. And that makes a huge difference for me as a viewer, and I would agree with you. I think that the kind of profile that the competition's been getting is brilliant, and credit to the ECB, credit to the regions. I'm not 100% sure who has responsibility for the live streams, probably the regions, but in terms of the investment that's gone into this competition, it's been brilliant, hasn't it? Yeah,
they've been using the county setups to run the live streams, and some of them have been better than others, and we have seen some with multi-camera, which has been brilliant. We were able to watch a really good stream of the Diamonds game the other day, so that was great.
In terms of the future, I guess there's maybe a slight concern that next year things kind of might revert when the 100's up and running, and that there might be a bit less profile around the regional competition, maybe.
Yeah, they might be, but on the other hand, once you've done it once, you've kind of put it up there, and there's a precedent being created now for this regional competition, whatever it gets called going forwards, for it being on the front page of CRICKETher, for example, and I think that that's something that probably will stick. So hopefully this higher profile is here to stay.
Great. Obviously, there's also a little bit of a question in my mind about the fact or the extent to which the counties are prepared to kind of give over some of this ownership of the competition to the new regional identities. And for example, it does feel like the Thunder are basically still Lancashire. When they do their tweets, they do the red rose, they talk about being proud to wear the red rose, and that seems to still be a really core component of that side's identity, and perhaps not unexpectedly, given that Thunder are Lancashire for all intents and purposes in terms of the players that they've selected. So that's an interesting one. And I guess there's potentially some stuff about the extent to which South East Stars really wanted to still keep being called Surrey Stars.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen this whole battle once for the Kia Super League, that when the Kia Super League first started off, the ECB were adamant that these would be regional identities and they wouldn't be directly tied to any county brands. In the end, several of the teams were very directly tied to their county brands, particularly Surrey. Who was this is very explicitly a Surrey side, and we're going to have the feathers on our shirts and things like that, even though we're called the Surrey Stars. So and that was a battle ultimately that the ECB lost, really. That that the counties were powerful enough to go, well, we are going to carry on with our county identity. We're going to be the Yorkshire Diamonds and the Lancashire Thunder, and so on. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I wouldn't be surprised if Surrey in 2 years' time go, you know what, these are the Surrey Stars, and we're back to the Surrey Stars. You know, Surrey aren't afraid to change their branding. They've changed their branding with their men's T20 Blast team. You know, they've been prepared to switch that up. I think we could well see the same thing here. In the same way that Surrey are clearly want ultimately their 100 team to be called the Surrey 100 or whatever it's going to be. You know, they've compromised for the moment on the Oval Invincibles, but if the ECB think that's the battle they've won, I think that, you know, hindsight may prove them wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. But overall, we feel really positive about the competition, don't we? And it's important to say when we feel positively about things, and you know, most things in this competition are 100% right, and it's been really exciting to be covering some of the games. In terms of the on-field action, there's kind of it's become clear that some of the teams are much more dominant than others, and actually I think that so in the South Group, the Vipers are at the top and Storm are a little way behind. Whereas the Sunrisers and the Stars are now out of it completely, with 2 matches still to play. Whereas the Storm could still catch the Vipers in terms of who gets to that final. And then in the North Group, we've got Diamonds are currently top, but Sparks could potentially still qualify. Is that right, Sid?
Yeah, Sparks didn't do themselves any favour by losing to the Lightning the other day, and they need at least 1 bonus point and 2 wins, and for the Diamonds to lose their last game. So I think the Diamonds are kind of that close up in the north. Here in half an hour's time is the really big game here, because if the Storm win today, then they can potentially turn it around and turn the table almost on its head, if you like. Whereas if the Vipers win today, then they will be qualified. The Storm won't be able to catch them.
Right. So obviously some of the teams are doing a lot better than others. Why is it that, do you think, let's talk about the Vipers because we're here. Why have the Vipers been so successful?
Well, I think that, you know, you've got to hand out the credit. A lot of it goes down to Georgia Adams. She's been in great form. She's made a big contribution. Paige Schofield, their other kind of batting pro, you know, has also, you know, had some good knocks. Tara Norris with the ball has been bowling well. You know, and it's all come good for them, and they've actually looked like a really professional side. They've been really good in the field. We actually saw a big difference between the Vipers and the Sunrisers here the other day. You can see, I mean, it's a huge green space, but actually you can possibly see the outfield in terms of where the boundary rope is not, and it's not that big. It's a sort of classic women's international outfield, and you've got to be really quick in that outfield to chase the ball down if you're trying to stop those fours. And the Vipers were able to do that. We also saw some great catching from Maya Boucher, including one absolutely wonderful catch, which is such a pity that it wasn't caught properly on the live stream. They did actually have a camera from somewhere over there pointing down to it, but they weren't able to do a clip which showed that Captain Brad's picture of her taking the catch. It was wonderful. I mean, it was the second best catch I've ever seen her take. Now, I should say that the best catch I've ever seen her take was one of the best catches I've ever seen when she was about 14 and she was playing for Middlesex. And it was her first season. It was a game at Wokingham against Berkshire, and she took a fantastic catch, diving high to her right, and she caught the ball, and she was like in mid-air like a goalkeeper, and that one of the best I've ever seen. So. Yeah, but generally
Maya Boucher, gun fielder.
Yeah, the fielding's been really good from the Vipers, and their batting's been in top form. So, but Raf, what's gone wrong for people like the Sunrisers and the Lancashire? Sorry, I'm not supposed to call them that. The Northwest Thunder. What's gone wrong for those sides?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? I'm sure that they'll be sitting down and reflecting on the season when these next couple of matches are wrapped up. I think from my perspective, certainly impressionistically, it looks like the sides that have got a good mix of younger players coming through and some kind of more established, I hesitate to use the word older, but older players who have got that good mix have actually been much more successful. I think that Vipers have done that really well. So for example, here on Friday we saw that Carla Rudd was able to kind of really sort of marshal the tail just coming in the late middle order, and actually they were able to add a really, really crucial 48 runs over the last 10 overs, and she was really kind of spearheading that. And you can't necessarily do that very easily if you're in your first season of senior cricket. You really need that experience, I think, and it looks certainly from the outside like a team like the Sunrisers has very much treated this as a development competition, and looking at what might be happening in 4 or 5 years rather than how to win it this year. And I do think that explicitly excluding people from the competition on the basis of age, as the Sunrisers appear to have done, is a big mistake, and the results have proved that. I think that's obviously not something that's come from the ECB. It's the regions who decide their priorities. It's the regions who decide who to select, and therefore, in terms of the kind of age balance of the sides, that very much rests with the regions. I want to emphasise that very much, and that's why, for example, we've seen the Stars are playing Susie Rowe, and the Diamonds are playing Jenny Gunn. There is no ECB edict about you cannot select people who are over the age of 26 or whatever, or over the age of 30. It's just that some regions seem to be operating that as a policy, and I think that's proved a mistake in terms of the on-field results.
Yeah, I mean, it might be there's a plan, right? They might have a plan, and it could be that Trevor Griffin's discussed this with the guys at Middlesex, and he's gone, look, my plan is for a 5-year plan, and I plan to win this competition in year 3, 4 and 5. Don't expect too much in years 1 and 2. And I guess that would be fair enough. It's just, we don't really know what's going on there, I guess. So there could be a plan, but at the moment, in the short term, it does look as though you're right, yeah.
Now, we very much talked up the Vipers, partly because we've been watching them on Friday, and we'll be watching them today. But Sid, you've got a bit of a theory about the Diamonds. You think they're going to win the competition, don't you? Well,
you've given it away, Raf, there, somewhat. I was going to build up to that.
Sorry.
No, seriously. The live stream that we watched the other day, we had a good quality live stream from Liverpool, was it?
Yeah.
And with multi-camera setup and full commentary. And it was great, but it did also allow me to properly watch what was going on with the Diamonds. And I'm sort of surprised to say this, and as a bit of a Vipers fan, I don't think there's much of a secret about that. It's hard to say, but I think the Diamonds could well win this competition. Yeah, they look really strong and really solid, and definitely something that could make a difference though to actually who wins it in the end, almost regardless of how they get to the final, is what England players are coming through, because it's going to be a week of England selection, isn't it, Raf? We're going to have some England selections made this week. We understand that England are going to take their current squad of 24 and trim it down to maybe 18 at this stage, and so there'll be a group of players that will come back to their regions with the opportunity to play next weekend for their region and in the final. So what difference could that make, Raf?
Well, I think to be honest, it perhaps puts paid to your theory about the Diamonds. I would say that it's probably unlikely that the Diamonds will get any of their England players back, so that would be Nat Siver, Catherine Brunt and Lauren Winfield, whereas it is quite likely that Vipers, for example, will get Lauren Bell back. This is just based on the fact that I would think that Lisa Kitely and Heather Knight, who are kind of doing the final selections for that England squad to play the 5 T20s against the West Indies, are probably more likely to go with the very established players rather than perhaps some of the younger players like Lauren in terms of the final selections.
Is that the right decision though, Raf? What would you do if you were in Lisa Kitely's shoes? What kind of choices do you think should inform her selections for this West Indies T20 series?
Well, it's a really good question, isn't it? And obviously it's easy to look on from the sidelines and say, well, I would do this. But I do think that West Indies are not going to be a particularly strong opposition. They weren't a very strong opposition last summer when they came over here. England beat them very easily and they looked quite limp, to be honest. They didn't look very much better in the World T20 earlier this year, did they? And, it's probably fair to say that given the coronavirus situation, this is a West Indies side that have only been back together, I think, a couple of weeks. They've obviously been doing a bit of training and presumably some kind of intra-squad matches maybe at Derby, although they haven't really got enough players to be doing that. But basically, England have got a massive advantage in the sense of they've been back training since, late June or something like that. And obviously they weren't able to all train together as a squad at the beginning, but they've been able to keep their iron in the nets. And they've also been playing a number of intra-squad matches. They've had a much greater, more substantial build-up to this series than the West Indies have. So I'd be really surprised if England don't win this 5-match series 5-0 very easily, to be honest. It's great to be getting international cricket back. But this isn't necessarily going to be the most competitive opposition, is my sense. I mean, potentially I'll be eating my pink hat in a couple of weeks' time. Let's wait and see. But that's my sense. And the other thing to note is that the 2021 World Cup's been postponed by a year. There isn't really anything particularly significant going to be happening then for the next 18 months or something. Yes, there'll be some international cricket played between now and then, but none of it's going to, for example, count towards qualification for the World Cup. It's not going to be championship matches, and so, you know, if you're not going to throw in your younger players now, and if you're not going to treat this as a really amazing development opportunity for your young bowlers, Lauren Bell, Izzy Wong, and, you know, some of your less experienced batters, so somebody like Sophia Dunkley or Bryony Smith, if you're not going to chuck them in now, when are you going to chuck them in? It's a golden opportunity, to be honest. So I think if I was Lisa Kiteley, I'd be approaching it like that, really. And yeah, therefore I might be sending Catherine Brunt back to play for the Diamonds in the next weekend and in the final, potentially. Yeah, but I don't think that she's going to do that.
Yeah, that's the question.
You know, I just don't think that she's going to do that. England have put so much of a kind of focus on the here and now and winning the current matches that, yeah, maybe they'll play their normal, very established team for the first 3 games. The last 2 will be dead rubbers, so yeah, they might bring in maybe Sophia Dunkley. They might, you know, throw in couple of slightly more fringe players for those, but generally the squad selections will be on the basis of this is our best side right now and we're not thinking about 2022. That's what I think.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll see. We'll find out this week, we think.
Yeah. So it's still Women's Cricket Month, # Women's Cricket Month, and it's been really nice seeing all the posts on Twitter over the last week or so. So keep those posts coming. We are tracking the hashtag, and it's yeah, as I say, really nice to see. But for now, we're going to go and watch Vipers against the Storm. See you in a week's time.